everyone, so good to see you again. We are covering The Hobbit once again, thanks to all my wonderful Patreon supporters. And I am taking suggestions, by the way, when I am done with The Hobbit, if there's a book that you would like to hear next. I'm going to be doing a little bit of experimentation with it, so I am taking suggestions, just a little FYI, but let's begin. And in the name of all of wonder, don't mention the word furrier again. I cannot tell you much more, though it ought to be enough. Some say that he is a bear, descended from a great and ancient bears of the mountains that lived there before the giants came. Others say that he is a man, descended from the first men who lived before Smaug or the other dragons came into this part of the world, and before the goblins came into the hills and out of the north. I cannot say, though I fancy the last is the true tale. He is not the sort of person to ask questions of. At any rate, he is under no enchantment but his own. He lives in an oak wood, and has a great wooden house, and as a man he keeps cattle and horses, which are nearly as marvelous as himself. They work for him and talk to him. He does not eat them, neither does he hunt or eat wild animals. He keeps hives and hives of great fierce bees, and lives most on cream and honey. As a bear, he ranges far and wide. I once saw him sitting alone on top of the Carrack at night, watching the moon sinking toward the misty mountains, and I heard him growl in the tongue of the bears, "The day will come when I will perish and shall go back." That is why I believe he once came from the mountains himself. Bilbo and the dwarves had now plenty to think about, and they asked no more questions. They still had a long way to walk before them. Up the slope and down dale they plodded. It grew very hot. Sometimes they rested under trees, and Bilbo felt so hungry that he would have eaten acorns if there had been any ripe enough and had fallen to the ground. It was the middle of the afternoon before they noticed that great patches of flowers had begun to spring up, all the same kind growing together as if they had been planted. Especially there was clover, waving patches of coxcomb clover and purple clover, and wide stretches of short, white, sweet-smelling honey clover. There was a buzzing and a whirring and a droning in the air. Bees were busy everywhere, and such bees! Bilbo had never seen anything like them. If one of them was to sting me, he thought, I should swell up again, big as I am. They were bigger than hornets. The drones were bigger than your thumb, a good deal, and the bands of yellow on their deep black bodies shone like fiery gold. "We are getting near," said Gandalf. "We are on the edge of his bee pastures." After a while they came to a belt of tall and very ancient oaks, and beyond these to a high thorn hedge through which you could neither see nor scramble. "You had better wait here," said the wizard to the dwarves, "and when I call or whistle, begin to come after me. And when I see, you will see all the way I go, but only in pairs, mind, about 5 minutes between the pair of you. Bomba is fattest and will do for 2. He had better come alone and last. Come on, Mr. Baggins. There is a gate somewhere around this way." And with that he went off along the hedge, taking the frightened hobbit with him. They soon came to a wooden gate, high and broad, beyond which they could see gardens and a cluster of low wooden buildings, some thatched and some made of unshaped logs, barns, stables, sheds, and a long, low wooden house. Inside, on the southward side of the great hedges, were rows and rows of hives, with bell-shaped tops made of straw. The noise of the giant bees flying to and fro and crawling in and out filled all the air. The wizard and the hobbit pushed open the heavy creaking gate and went down a wide track towards the house. Some horses, very sleek and well-groomed, trotted up and across the grass and looked at them very intently with very intelligent faces. Then off they galloped to the buildings.
"They have gone off to tell him of the arrival of strangers," said Gandalf.
Soon they reached the courtyard, 3 walls of which they were formed by the wooden house and its 2 long wings. In the middle there was lying a great oak trunk with many lopped branches beside it. Standing near was a huge man with a thick black beard and hair, and great bare arms and legs with knotted muscles. He was clothed in a tunic of wool down to his knees, and was leaning on a large axe. The horses were standing by him with their noses at his shoulder.
"Look, here they are," he said to the horses. "They don't look dangerous. You can be off! Ha ha!"
He laughed with a great rolling laugh, put down his axe, and came forward.
"Who are you, and what do you want?"
he said gruffly, standing in front of them and towering tall above Gandalf. As for Bilbo, he could easily have trotted through his legs without ducking his head to miss the fringe of the man's brown tunic.
"I am Gandalf," said the wizard. "Never heard of him," growled the man. "And what's this little fellow?" he said, stooping down to frown at the hobbit with his bushy black eyebrows. "That is Mr. Baggins, a hobbit of good family and unimpeachable reputation," said Gandalf.
Bilbo bowed. He had no hat to take off, and he was painfully conscious of his many missing buttons.
"I am a wizard," continued Gandalf. "I have heard of you, if you have not heard of me. But perhaps you have heard of my good cousin Radagast, who lives near the southern borders of Mirkwood. Yes, not a bad fellow as wizards go, I believe. I used to see him now and again," said Beorn. "Well now, I know who you are, or who you say you are. What do you want?" "To tell you the truth, we have lost our luggage and nearly lost our way, and are rather in need of help, or at least advice. I may say we've had a rather bad time with goblins in the mountains." "Goblins?" said the big man less gruffly. "Oh, so you've been having trouble with them, have you? What did you go near them for?" "We did not mean to. They surprised us at night in a pass which we had come to cross. We were coming out of the lands over the west into the mountains. It is a long tale." "Then you had better come inside and tell me some of it, if it won't take all day," said the man, leading the way through the dark door that opened out of the courtyard into the house. Following him, they found themselves in a wide hall with a fireplace in the middle. Though it was summer, there was a wood fire burning, and smoke was rising to the blackened rafters in search of a way out through an opening in the roof. They passed through this dim hall, lit only by the fire in the hole above it, and came through another smaller door into a sort of veranda propped on wooden posts made of single tree trunks. It faced south and was still warm and filled with the light of the western sun, which slanted into it and fell golden on the garden full of flowers that came right up to the steps. Here they sat on wooden benches while Gandalf began his tale, and Bilbo swung and dangled his legs and looked at the flowers in the garden and wondered what their names could be, as he had never seen half of them before. "I was coming over the mountains with a friend or two," said the wizard. "Or two? I only see one, and a little one at that," said Beorn. "Well, to tell you the truth, I did not want to bother you with a lot of us until I found out if you were busy. I will give a call if I may." "Go on, call away." So Gandalf gave a long, shrill whistle, and presently Thorin and Dori came round the house by the garden path and stood bowing low before them. "1 or 2, 3 you meant, I see," said Beorn. "But these aren't hobbits, these are dwarves." "Thorin Oakenshield at your service." "Dori at your service," said the 2 dwarves, bowing again. "I don't need your service, thank you," said Beorn, "but I expect you need mine. I am not over fond of dwarves, but if it is true that you are Thorin, son of Thrain, son of Thror, I believe, and your companion is respectable, and that you are enemies of goblins and not up to any mischief in my lands. What are you up to, by the way?"
They were on their way to visit the lands of their fathers, away east beyond Mirkwood, put in Gandalf, and it is entirely by accident that we are in your lands at all. We were crossing by the high pass, which should have brought us to the road that lies to the south of your country, when we were attacked by evil goblins, as I was about to tell you." "Go on telling, then," said Beorn, who was never very polite. "There was a terrible storm. The stone giants were out, hurling rocks at the head of the pass. We took refuge in a cave, the Hobbit and I and several of our companions." "Do you call two several?" "Well, no. As a matter of fact, there are more than two." "Where are they? Killed? Eaten? Gone home?" "Well, no. They don't seem to have all come when I whistled. Shy, I expect. You see, we were very much afraid that we had be a rather lot for you to entertain."
"Go on, whistle again. I'm in for a party, it seems, and one or two more won't make much difference," growled Beorn.
Gandalf whistled again, but Nori and Ori were there almost before he had stopped, for if you remember, Gandalf had told them to come in pairs every 5 minutes.
"Hello," said Beorn. "You came pretty quick. Where are you hiding? Come in, my jack-in-the-boxes."
"Nori at your service."
"Ori at your—" they began, but Beorn interrupted you. "Thank you. When I want your help, I will ask for it. Sit down. Let's get on with this tale, or we'll be at supper time before it's ended."
"As we were soon asleep," said Gandalf, "a crack at the back of the cave opened, and goblins came out and grabbed the hobbit and the dwarves and our troop of ponies."
"Troop of ponies? What were you, a traveling circus? Or were you carrying a lot of goods? Or do you always call 6 a troop?"
"Oh, no. Well, as a matter of fact, there were more than 6 ponies, for there were more than 6 of us. And, well, here are 2 more." Just at that moment, Balin and Dwalin appeared and bowed so low that their beards swept the stone floor. The big man was frowning at first, but they did their very best to be frightfully polite and kept on nodding and bending and bowing and waving their hoods before their knees in proper dwarf fashion, till he stopped frowning and burst into a cackling laugh. They looked so comical.
"Droop is right," he said. "A fine comic one. Come in, my merry men. And what are your names? I don't want your service just now, only your names, and then sit down and stop wagging."
"Balin and Dwalin," they said, not daring to be offended, and they sat flop down on the floor, rather looking surprised.
"Now, go on again," said Beorn to the wizard.
Where was I? Oh, yes, I was not grabbed. I killed a goblin or 2 with a flash."
"Good," growled Beorn. "It is some good being a wizard, then."
"And slipped inside the crack before it closed. I followed down into the main hall, which was crowded with goblins. The great goblin was there with 30 or 40 armed guards. I thought to myself, even if they were not all chained together, what can a dozen do against so many?"
"A dozen? That's the first time I've heard 8 called a dozen. Or have you still got some more jacks that haven't yet come out of their boxes?"
"Well, yes, there seem to be a couple more. Oh, here they are now, Feely and Keely, I believe," said Gandalf, as these 2 appeared and stood smiling and bowing.
"That's enough," said Beorn. "Sit down and be quiet. Now go on, Gandalf."
So Gandalf went with the tale until he came to the fight in the dark and the discovery of the lower gate and their horror when they found that Mr. Baggins had been missing. "We counted ourselves and found that there was no hobbit. There were only 14 of us."
14? That's the first time I've heard 1 from 10 leave 14. You mean 9, or else you haven't told me all the names of your party.
Well, of course you haven't seen Owen and Glowin yet, and bless me, here they are. I hope you will forgive them for bothering you."
"Oh, let 'em come. Hurry up, come along, you 2, and sit down."
"But look here, Gandalf, even there we've only got yourself and 10 dwarves and the hobbit that was lost. That only makes 11, plus 1 mislaid, and not 14, unless wizards count differently to other people. But now, please get on with your tale." Beorn did not show it more than he could help, but really he had begun to get very interested. You see, in the old days he had known the very part of the mountains that Gandalf had described. He nodded and he growled, and he heard of the hobbits' reappearance, and when they scrambled down the stone slide and the wolf ring in the woods. When Gandalf came to their climbing of the trees and the wolves all underneath, he got up and strode about and muttered, I wish I had been there. I would have given them more than fireworks.
Well, said Gandalf, very glad to see the tale was making a good impression, I did the best I could. There we were, with the wolves going mad underneath us, and the forest beginning to blaze in places where the goblins were coming down from the hills and discover us, and they yelled with delight and sang songs making fun of us. 15 birds and 5 fir trees.
Good heavens, growled Bjorn. Don't pretend the goblins can't count. They can. 12 isn't 15, and they know it.
And so do I, and there is Bifur and Bofur as well. I haven't ventured to introduce them before, but here they are. In came Bifur and Bofur. And me, gasped Bombur, puffing up behind. He was fat and also angry at being left till last. He refused to wait 5 minutes and followed immediately after the other two.
Well, now there are 15 of you, and since goblins can count, and I suppose this is all that were up in the trees. Now perhaps we can finish this story without any more interruptions.
Mr. Baggins saw how clever Gandalf had been. The interruptions had really made Bjorn more interested in the story, and the story had kept him from sending off the dwarves at once like suspicious beggars. He never invited people into his house if he could help it. He had very few friends, and they lived a good way away, and he never invited more than a couple into his house at a time. Now he had got 15 strangers sitting in his porch. By the time the wizard had finished his tale and had been told of the eagle's rescue and how they had been brought to the Carrock and the sun had fallen behind the peaks of the misty mountains and the shadows were long in Bjorn's garden.
A very good tale, he said. The best I have heard for a long while. If all beggars could tell such a good one, they might find me kinder. You may be making it all up, of course, but you deserve a supper for the story all the same. Let's have something to eat.
Yes, please, they all said together. Thank you very much. And we'll stop there. If you want to see what happens with Bjorn and the dwarves and Gandalf and, of course, Bilbo, we'll cover that next time. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll talk to you soon.